Today on the PIO podcast, today's episode is one that hits close to home for anyone connected to public safety. When a police officer, firefighter, or EMS professional dies in the line of duty, the focus is often on the incident itself. The headlines, the procession, the ceremony. But after the cameras are gone and the attention fades, there are families left behind navigating grief, uncertainty, and a future that looks very different than it did just a few days before. That's where organizations like the 100 Club of Illinois step in. Today I'm joined by Caitlyn, Brennan, and Krase, who works on the front lines of supporting families of fallen first responders. Their work begins in the worst moments of someone's life, but it doesn't end there. It continues for months and years, and in many cases, lifetimes. Conversation just isn't about loss. It's about what support really looks like, what agencies get right and wrong in these critical early moments, and what all of us in public safety can learn about showing up when it matters most. Caitlyn and Meg, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. This is a very near and dear topic for me. Many years ago, when I was a law enforcement officer, we had an officer die in line of duty, first one that we ever had, and you guys were there for him and his family, and it was very traumatic. That was one of the toughest experiences I've ever been through as an officer. It certainly impacted me and the other officers for decades later. We had 2 suicides that happened within a 10-year period after that, and a number of other officers that had issues based off of the loss of Steve. So believe me, this is something I was hoping to get somebody on to talk about this, so I'm glad you guys could. So first, for those may not be familiar what the 100 Club is, what's the mission of the 100 Club? What is it?
So now in our 60th year, in August 27th, we'll celebrate 60 years of being a nonprofit within the state of Illinois. In our 60th year, we are an organization that supports the first responder community in a whole bunch of different ways. We started out 60 years ago focusing on families who lose a loved one in the line of duty. And that's still the heart of our mission. We do that in a number of ways. That immediate assistance that you spoke about, financial assistance, as well as higher education assistance and mental health access for our families. In 2020, at the height of everything going on in the world, we took our mission from Cook Lake and McHenry County and moved it statewide. And when we did that, we now cover all 102 counties. And we also moved into the mental health space. So we run the mental health network for first responders, which is a whole bunch of Meg's realm, but it includes trainings and critical incident callouts and really trying to wrap our arms around what's happening when it comes to mental health and our first responders and how we can make sure the good and the right people are in front of our first responders.
Now that's interesting. I did not know that you guys had moved into that realm. So that's awesome. I love to hear that. One of the very lucky things when we had our line of duty deaths is they had us mandatorily go through, and we sat down with counselors and personnel, and then that continued. You had the option to continue it if you wanted to, and many did. I did continuously for 3 or 4 years after the line of duty death. So, and then picked it back up when we had our suicides and so on. So this is definitely something that I think is outstanding that you guys are doing. So I just learned something new. So what does your role look like day to day for both of you?
So I can start. It looks different. There is never one day that looks like the day we had before. Most of my job is a flow between fundraising, making sure we can actually afford all of the programming that we put out for the first responder community, and doing programming. So whether that's training, responding to crisis, doing triage, we get a lot of phone calls that say, hey, this is going on. What do we do next? It's 24/7, both on call, and it's different every day. I'll give Meg the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. Every day is completely different. So I'm a clinician. So I go out and I do a lot of education when it comes to what's actually going on with our first responders. How are we working with them? Caitlyn mentioned our critical incident response. We're out at departments 2 to 3 times a week doing different critical incident responses throughout the state, making sure that we are helping our first responders to process through all of the stuff that their brains shouldn't be intaking. And then one of our big pushes is our department audits, where we're coming in and working with departments to survey their people and actually ask them what they're looking for when it comes to wellness, and how do we build an effective program based on your department and your department culture, not what legislations and administrations think we want, but what do the actual first responders on the front lines want to have for wellness.
Well, that's a novel idea, actually asking the people what they would like instead of what that's getting shoved down their throat by legislation. I love that, especially in this state. Legislation can be choking, so to speak. And so let's talk about what happens when that call comes in. When a line of duty death happens, what does your response look like in those first few hours?
Sure. So we receive that information in all sorts of different ways of how those incidents happen and what that response looks like. So kind of from jump, we talk to command or whoever has made that outreach. Our response between Meg and myself, we can pretty much get anywhere in this state and drop everything to go and be immediately with an agency and with a family. So depending on what has happened, we're meeting members of family, we're meeting agency members at a hospital, at agency headquarters, wherever kind of that immediate response is needed. Our goal in that is to, again, triage. See where family's at. Do we need to bring family members in if people are out of state or if they're far away from where this incident has happened? Do we need to coordinate with the agency to make sure that all of the right support people are there if possible? So whomever that might be for a family as well. Typically, we will split. Meg and I will split kind of that response. I will talk to command and walk them through the procedures and what we need to be thinking about, and then also be there on hand for family. And typically then Meg will go back to the agency, and I'll let you pick up there.
Yeah, I go back to the agency and I typically work with our frontline personnel on, hey, where are we at right now? Let's put eyes on everybody, see what triage needs to be happening immediately. We call those diffusings of, hey, here are some resources, here's some stuff that you might experience over the next couple of days. And then we talk about how in the future, we will sit down and do a full debrief where we talk about our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But we typically don't do that until after a person's laid to rest because we need to have our bodies to have time to process and go through this whole situation. We can't jump in early. We've got to give ourselves a little bit of processing time. But in the meantime, here's some things that we can use over the next 7 to 10 days to help us in the meantime.
I appreciate that. So from an outside public perspective, what are families' experiences that most people never see?
So I think the biggest thing, and I say this often when people ask that question, is it's not only the death of your person. So I always like to bring us back to point that your person, your family member is on loan to whatever agency they work for. They are yours. So it's not only the loss of your person, but it's the public loss of your person. It's the scrutiny of what they did before this incident happened. It's the scrutiny of what the department did. It's the scrutiny of who they were as a person. So a lot of it becomes public fodder, and we lose focus on the fact that this is somebody's father or mother or brother or sister or son, or mom and dad. And I think that that's a big piece that doesn't necessarily happen. If I died tomorrow, yes, my family would be affected, but is it going to make the 9 o'clock news? No. Is it going to be a scrutiny of my entire life and every decision I've made while on the job? No. So I do think there's a big piece of you lose your anonymity, but you also lose your ability to just focus on family and focus on what you need to get done.
Yeah. Meg, do you want to add to that?
I'm going to say, I think that it's also the part that people forget when it comes to anniversaries. While it's not always just those big number anniversaries, it's the everyday things that happen throughout your life that then your person's not there for. And how do you experience sending your child to their first day of school without a parent? And those everyday things that people take for granted that we don't think about in the scheme of a heavy loss like that.
Right. I know that in the case of our officer, the one thing that we did is we all showed up for first day of school, it's a little tough, and walked with him to class. And it was a very tough time. And he was a special needs student, so it was even more difficult. So where do agencies help the most in those early moments, and where do they sometimes break down?
So we do a lot on the front end. Meg and I both do anywhere between a 2 and an 8 hour training on how you can prepare as an agency for both a line of duty and a critical incident. So I think we're making the rounds throughout the state and throughout the unions and the others to make sure that people have that information. But I think a lot of people think, hey, this is just going to be another incident that happens. You're all used to critical incidents, but it's really hard to think clearly when it's your own person. And I do think a lot of times we get faced with that when we're talking about what kind of preparation you can do and what kind of conversations. And people go, yeah, I'm used to critical incidents. I'll be fine. It's a lot different when you're staring at your buddy's spouse. Yeah. So taking that, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. It's human emotion, and we want to see that. But I do think there's an expectation of, I'll be able to handle this. that isn't necessarily always true.
No, it's not. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Meg.
I would also say that in terms of where do some things break down that go back to sort of your audience is what we're putting out publicly. And whether we're trying to control what gets put out on social media, things like that, and that urge for every department member to post things, and how we have been in the unfortunate circumstances where families are finding out via social media posts and that type of notification, and what public information is going out there and what of that narrative we can keep for the family. Are we letting the family know before we post something? Are we letting them know before the press releases so that we can have that communication so that the family has some semblance of control over that as well?
Excellent point. I appreciate you bringing that to our audience that's going to be here. All right, so I should have asked this earlier of you guys, so I'm going to go backwards to the beginning. What drew each of you personally to this work?
I'll let you go, Meg.
So my background is that I previously worked for in-house as a clinician at a police department, and then prior to that, a child advocacy center. So I really got drawn in for what are we doing and what are we not doing for wellness. And then I also experienced the loss of a friend in the line of duty, in really going through what that did, not only to our community, to ourselves as friends, things like that, and really being like, what can we do in this situation that feels so incredibly out of control and one that I can't do a whole lot about, but what can I do? So I started volunteering with the club after a critical incident. I run a therapy dog team. And so I had gotten set up as a volunteer with the club running our dog team, and then really fell in love with the mission and the work. And so I came on staff about 1.5 to 2 years ago.
Nice.
So I've been
Kayla?
working in emergency management for a little over 20 years internationally, and then back on the home front. I came home for Katrina, so I've been home based for quite a bit. But my background is again working in emergency management, working in public service, and working with our families. And I'm also a police family as well. So my husband's on the job. So it's a little bit of all of the above.
Well, thank you for your service and his service, and wish him well and safety for everything that he does and for all that your guys are doing to support those officers and families that truly need it. So a lot of people assume support ends after the funeral, but that's really just the beginning. So what does long-term support actually look like for these families?
So we have a few different programming. So Caitlyn brought up the financial component. We also have an educational assistance program for the families where we fund dependents, whether it's spouse or children, through higher education. So whether that's trade school, through medical school, so we're there to help with those financial aspects of that. But then we also do routine programming throughout the year. So we have, my favorite one is our zoo day. So we take over a big section of Brookfield Zoo and get all of the families together so that they can be together and experience that camaraderie of people who have a shared experience. We do different events throughout the year, from breakfast to plant therapy to just a get together. So we still continually do that. We also do sporting events together, and then giving access and that continued support when it comes to mental health resources. We do a cookie decorating contest with our families during Hero Month, during May, when we have all of the different memorials. So just trying to constantly be that support that's there for them when they want it.
And how do those needs change over time? Like, I know you brought up like medical school and that, but there's got to be other things that impact, especially I would think, though, I think Caitlyn, you mentioned this milestones later on. Usually that can be a factor. Is that where you guys are covering those things?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of different touch points we have. We become an extension. I have jokes with a couple of our family members that I'm their brother, sister, cousin, because we do become an extension at some point with these families. We become a go-to point of, hey, do you know what this benefit is? Hey, do you know who this person is who's reaching out to me? What do memorials look like? You know, we take a lot of time to explain what those memorials look like. And what those touch points look like. I often reference it as, we're going to let you build that scab up, and then we're going to peel it back off at the year memorial. We're going to peel it back off at the firefighter or the police memorial. So we have a lot of conversations about what we can do and what supports we can bring in. But I think as families grow and change, you know, we have some families who we meet and there's children in utero. So kids who aren't even born yet before their father is killed in the line of duty. And we have some families where we're meeting adult children. So how they change, you know, we have great-great-grandchildren who are part of our programming, who come to the zoo day and do things. But it's always kind of a touch point and or a reference for families to go back to.
And I also think
Yeah,
based on
Go
where
ahead,
they
Mike.
want
I'm
us.
sorry.
No, you're good. I think it's based on where they want us. We have some families who might go a year without contact to us and then have something and just know that we'll be there. So I think it also ebbs and flows by what their needs are at that time.
Yeah, and you brought up the in utero. I'm thinking, wasn't it Michael Ullman's um wife that was pregnant and they had to delay the funeral, if I'm not mistaken? I mean, because she was giving birth. I mean, how tragic. Absolutely. Yeah, it just gets you in there. Hey,
Unfortunately,
so
she's not the only one. We have quite a
no,
few in utero children. So it's definitely a statement to their legacy and the just sheer and utter willpower of some of our survivors that they're able to get through some of these things.
yeah, absolutely. What are some of the biggest gaps you're filling that others might find that they don't realize exist?
So one thing I bring in this space is I've been doing this for 13 years. So it's the number of families and the number of agencies that we've been able to support. Part of it is just people don't know what they don't know. So when it comes to gaps, it's, hey, this is what's coming next. Or as Meg had mentioned, are we letting the family in on some of these statements, some of the things that are going to come up? So some of those gaps look like, making sure that we're taking care of a family liaison so that there's a support system for a family liaison, making sure that we're checking in on command because there's a lot going on with command on, hey, am I doing the right thing? Or am I taking care of my people? Making sure that the family's voice is heard. So something we ask families to do is, speaking to your population too, is to put out a family statement. So it's not only the obituary and it's not what the department's going to say, but we say, pick a photo that speaks about your person and your hero, and let's put out a statement from you. The hope is that it stops, the media from calling Aunt Susie in Kentucky to ask about your basketball career, but it's also that you get to actually share with the world who your person was. So some of those gaps have to do with humanizing what actually happened. There's a lot of policy and procedure and, you worked in a department, you understand we just got to keep moving through and get all the boxes checked. And a lot of what we do is making sure that we're filling in that gray in between and having conversations that tie people back together.
I appreciate you bringing up the point about talking to command because I think everybody thinks of the officers, but they forget the command staff they're going to be impacted as well. And they're doing double duty because they have to have that image of professionalism that may be expected of somebody in that level, and they're still impacted. So you guys are working alongside agencies during some of the most difficult times. What does a strong partnership between you and that agency look like?
It's going to depend on the agency. Obviously, we have some really long-term relationships with agencies, the Chicago agencies, the Illinois State Police, and our suburban agencies who've unfortunately gone through these crises. But the partnership looks like, let's have conversations beforehand on policies, on running through what actually you have in place to take care of your people in the time of a line of duty or a critical incident, and just having a free flow of communication. We do have a special extra superpower of, I don't wear a badge. I don't work for your department, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on and also going to tell you what your family needs. And I mean, that kind of speaks to the gaps too, but not every agency gets a crying, grieving widow. Sometimes they get somebody who doesn't want to talk to the agency. Right. So really having the ability to look back at those partners in those agencies and say, hey, we're going to tell you what's really going on and make sure that both sides of the house are taken care of. But it's a free flow of communication. It's also a lot of trust. I've had many conversations with agencies the first time they experience a line of duty who are like, I just don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to mess this up. And the trust that we're going to help you walk through that, whether that's folding a flag at a funeral home or making sure that people are lined up to block out the media in front of an ME's office, or, hey, trust me, we've got to put this statement out about family, or we can't say this. A lot of it is just that trust of, we know what we're doing and we're going to help you get through it.
Right. And I know a lot of agencies, they plan for line of duty deaths, but they don't always necessarily have it laid out the way it should be. Is there something you guys have seen that should have been, that you can maybe give a generalization on how things should be formatted?
So we actually have full workbooks for agencies on how to do their policies and their procedures. And like I said, we teach that class, but we have all the paperwork. So if anybody's listening and they want it, please just let us know. But that comes from learned experience because we also apply for benefits for families for the state benefit and the federal benefit. So I know exactly what type of form and things we're going to need. So yes, I've seen that. We also, in teaching these courses, one of my favorite questions to ask is, hey, do you guys tabletop a line of duty? You tabletop everything. You go to training for all sorts of crazy things that are never going to happen. The chance of you having a critical incident, nevertheless, a line of duty, is higher than the chances of some of the off-the-wall trainings that you have to go through. But we don't want to talk about it because it's death and it's uncomfortable and we don't want to think about our own mortality. So I do think some agencies are getting around it. I also think at the end of the day, I don't ever expect anybody to pull out a policy manual when they have a line of duty. I expect you to think through it beforehand and make the phone calls for us and the other support agencies that'll help you get through it.
I also would say, just add to what she's saying of like, my biggest thing is let's make our people update their paperwork. Have your people update their beneficiaries. Who's getting a notification? What does that look like? Who's those requests? Making sure that we have that up-to-date paperwork and it's not locked in HR's office. So we have to wait at 2:00 in the morning till the HR director wakes up and gets there. Where do we have this information that's accessible and easy to access and to go about at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday?
It's never going to be Monday morning at 10 o'clock when everybody's in the office ever. All right, I want to touch on something. You guys mentioned it before that overlaps with our audience. You're operating in a very public and emotional situation. How do you think about communication during these moments?
So when it comes to the communication that we have, it's a very fine line of we can't go backwards. So being very thoughtful about what we're saying when we do these courses and when we talk to agencies, a lot of it is the bare minimum of what you have to state. We will give them actual press releases and say, hey, this is a good one. This is a not good one. And also the communication of who is actually controlling the narrative. So if the narrative is we had an OIS and we also lost an officer during this time, what is the most important thing that we have to share to the community? And what do we actually not have to share? So do we not have to share their name in the first 5 minutes? Do we not have to share where we're all going with our member? Do we not have to share some of those things? So people are getting better about it. Surprisingly, not every agency, not surprisingly, you would know better, but not every agency has a PIO. So if it's not you, what can we prep you for? And also a big part of that communication too is still to show your humanity. Because we've all seen those horrible releases where somebody gets on and you're like, does this person care what's actually happening? So showing that humanity, but also not giving up every piece of information we have. And checking in with your stakeholders, with your family, with your people. We have kind of a hierarchy of who gets information when it comes down the line. Number 1 is the family. Number 2 is the agency. Your people should know next because we owe them the equity of knowledge. We owe them the ability to say, this is what happened. So if we're following protocols there and communicating, making sure all of those levels of people know before the general public knows.
Yeah, the last thing you want to have is your staff finding out something in the media that they should have known in a message, an email, a video, a text message, whatever it might be.
Yep. One other thing that I would add to what Caitlyn is saying is also paying attention to where we're staging media. So if we have an event and we're telling officers or firefighters or whomever it is, hey, bring your families here. Here's a reunification point. Here's a point where you guys can be safe and have your moment. And then we're staging media at the same place. We need to also make sure that we are paying attention to that aspect because we've been in those situations where we have the department together grieving and there's 60 cameras sitting there staring at them. That's not then a safe place for our people. So making sure that we're doing what we need to do on the public side, but also protecting our people.
What risks do you guys see with misinformation or speculation when these incidents happen?
Can't tell you the number of families who found out because of Facebook, found out that their person was killed in the line of duty because somebody saw it on Facebook. That and/or a big piece that we go over is to make sure whomever your municipal governing body is, that they're on the same page. So if I'm a chief and I call my mayor and I say, hey, we lost so-and-so, or this incident happened, the mayor doesn't go to the comms team on the city side and say, put something out on Facebook, because unfortunately that happens. When it comes to some of those larger agencies, we can't control every single person. So you think of a CFD, a CPD, an ISP. If the word is out there You can't control what every single one of your agency members is going to say, but we can control that narrative from the top down. One of the big things we tell agencies too when we go and have those conversations is tell your people to mind their social media for the next day, because it does happen. It not only happens on notification, but it also happens on every one of those big critical moments. If there is somebody who is being arrested because of what happened, that's also on social media. We can't stop a lot of that, but some of those risks are families find out about things. We've had many a situation, when we're leaving a hospital or leaving an ME's office, one of my favorite tricks, and hopefully your people use this, is whoever is lined up outside, I want you lined up with your backs to the media so that those cameras cannot get photos of families. Because as soon as they do that, whomever there is there at the hospital or there at the ME's office, all of a sudden there's this speculation. So the number of times we've had misinformation go out to the media about some of our fallen heroes, do they have a child? Do they have 7 children? Who are all these kids at the hospital? Who are all these people? That hurts a family. If they then have to put out a statement that goes, that's not their child. So trying to block and protect families as much as we can to offset some of those risks. But I think that the risks are to the family and to the agency. They're also to the community, because there's a level of safety that you do or don't have depending on what happens in that incident.
Yeah. I think as a PIO, one of the things that when I do trainings for the PIOs that I train now, one of the things that I always tell them is when you have one of these line of duty deaths, that you go to your media and you have a conversation with them, letting them know these are the things that are off limits, and ask them respectfully and just say, would you want this if this was your loved one? And try and get them at least to understand perspective, because I think sometimes they forget they can get the image that they need without subjecting family to that. Guys, is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
I think you've got everything. I mean, I guess too, if there's anything else in your line of work that you'd want to know about what happens behind the scenes that can be helpful, because again, we do have that ability to kind of float between family and agency.
That's good to know. And I'm sure when you guys do your training, you're doing them You're doing them all over the state, I'm assuming, since you're statewide now. So you guys are going through the training units, the different MTUs?
Yep. So we go through the different
Excellent.
MPUs. Typically, it's departments who are reaching out. So right now, we've got one scheduled for over the summer in the middle of July in O'Fallon, Illinois. And then there will be one announced soon that's coming out in Will County. But we're a nonprofit, so we train for free. So anybody has the ability to reach out to us and ask us to come to their area and bring the training. And so we come out, we do that. We work through the MTUs to get the credits for it. On the fire side, we just show up and do it because there aren't the MTUs on that side. But we tend to do them both together, bring everybody out and get the information out there.
Excellent. All right. You guys up for some rapid fire questions?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, here we go. Phone call, voice memo, or FaceTime. What's your go-to?
Phone call.
Text.
Streaming binge or weekend read? What's your ideal escape?
Read.
Ooh, nice. Morning ritual, sunrise workout, quiet coffee, or news scroll?
Raccoon on meth. I'm a crazy person in the morning.
That's true. I would say doom scroll for me. I'm watching the videos on Instagram.
If you could adopt any animal, real or mythical, what would it be?
I want a mini cow. We have a farm. I don't have a mini cow.
I want an octopus. They're smart and I need more hands.
What's one song that always gets you moving no matter the mood?
I've got a feeling.
Oh, I like that. Teleportation or time travel, which power would you rather have?
Time travel.
Time travel, both of you. Wow. Play it safe or roll the dice. What's your instinct in a crisis?
For life, I would roll the dice. For work, play it safe.
Agreed.
Which historical figure would you want to shadow for a day, not just me?
Abraham Lincoln.
George Washington.
Cool. Ladies, final thoughts. What key points would you like listeners to take from today's interview?
The biggest thing for me is the focus back on family and the focus on taking care of everyone when it comes to a line of duty, not only the family, but the agency. I think there's some really great work that can be done on the forefront to prepare agencies for what happens when there's a line of duty, and let us know how we can help.
Excellent. Meg, did you want to add anything?
Okay, it's mostly just make sure you take care of yourself.
Cool. As we wrap this up, is there a piece of wisdom or a motto that you guys live by?
Mine is I will either find a way or I will make one.
Nice. How can people best reach you if they want to follow up or connect?
So our website is oneclubil.org. And all of our contact information is on there. Both Meg and I share our cell phone numbers as we are on call. So text, email, phone call, whatever works.
Ladies, thank you. You know, today it's been a reminder that behind every badge is a family and behind every loss is a long road that doesn't end when the ceremony does. I have a big thank you for Caitlyn and Meg for their work and for taking the time to share with us today. If you want to learn more, support their mission, we'll have links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.